Hello and welcome to today's episode of Mitten Backstage. Thanks so much for joining us today. I am sitting down with an old friend who I recently caught up with, recently being 2 years ago, but it seems like yesterday. A great bass player. His name is Matt Ryan. So I met Matt years ago, probably either late into middle school or just entering high school. We both were in the same cabin at Blue Lake Fine Arts Camp, along with James Connerl, a previous guest that I had on the podcast, if you have been a listener last year. So it was great to sit down and chat with Matt about what he's been doing since we saw each other at NAMM right before things shut down. Hear about his performing opportunities, the artists he's been playing with, what he's been doing creatively to kind of feed all of his creative desires, whether it's starting to work on his personal album or, just nerding out about music. We spent a lot of time just, talking about the artists that inspire us, and that was, such a fun time. If you like today's conversation and you want to support these podcasting efforts, you can head on over to patreon.com/Snedeker. There, you can get early access to podcast episodes, exclusive merch, and more. You can also head over to DutcherSnedeker.com to see everything else that I'm currently up to around the internet. And don't underestimate the power of social currency. All of the likes, shares, follows, any way that you can interact with whatever platform you enjoy the podcast on helps push the content out into the algorithm, helps let people know that these things are happening and that you enjoy them. It all goes into the larger ecosystem of being a creative in 2022 and, in the foreseeable future. So I appreciate anyone who engages with this, and, feel free to drop a comment too, or hit me up in a message. Let me know what you liked, what you think could be improved. I'm sure some people would love to tell me what's wrong with things because the internet's full of all types of people, and some people are just ready to go pow, and then you're like, wait, I messed up that one time. Sorry, you didn't. You should have used this plugin. You should buy it. It's $1 million. But anyway, let's just get right into today's episode with Matt Ryan.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I love that meme. That's like two guys holding guns at each other, and one says, "Oh shoot!" It's like, "What? Oh man, I can't remember." It's like, "What's the pay?" or something. And it's like, "All right, what's your budget? Like, how much do you want?" versus like, "What's your budget?" I love that, man. And
well, it was so funny because I did a podcast chat earlier today with Joe Fillion, this drummer who, spent years in Ultraviolet Hippopotamus and toured the country and had like the rock star life. And he was saying how, a lot of first time festivals wanted to book that band. And, the agents they were working with were like, hey, don't just take everything that they give you because like it might not be a good routing option, or, first time festivals always have problems, or, it could be someone's front yard, it could be whatever. And so they were trying to do that trick of like, that I sometimes do, especially for like solo gigs, or, if I want to have a free weekend or like a free day out of my weekend and someone hits me up about a thing, highball them so that it's like, I don't really want to do this gig, but if I could make this much, I'll do it. And
yeah, right.
Their asks were getting like, it'd be like, all right, we'll do it for like 15 grand. And they're like, done. It's like, no, you're not supposed to say. And then their next ask would be like 22 grand. And they're like, done. It's like, no, wait.
No. Do you see what you're doing right now?
Yeah, it's just like the price. There's no, they were just at the peak of the arc of that band was just like, there's some people who just like, whatever, just have it, take it, buy a new van with this money or whatever.
Yeah, right. Wow. Yeah, talk about highballing, bro.
Yeah, I was like, my highballing's not near that yet. I'm trying to get
half,
Right, yeah. Yeah, definitely trying to like I'm all my rates keep going up since, quarantine and the like cheaper services just to have some extra work, now
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
that's kind of fading away as things seem to be returning to normal. So
What a concept, musicians asking for more money after what, like, I don't know, maybe 80 years of getting paid the same for gigs.
being the only stagnant economy thing.
Yeah, right. It's
Yeah.
absolutely impossible. Yeah, man, I started doing the same thing. I like before quarantine, and it wasn't like I like to think that I had like a uh, enlightenment to really understanding like how much to ask for that kind of stuff when I wasn't getting gigs,
Right.
because everybody was just like sitting at home doing nothing. It's like, oh wow, I should probably think about what I'm going to do when everything comes back, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that, like, I had a lot of talks with fellow musicians and people that I was just hanging by, and it's hard to put that price to something that has no physical value.
Right.
you, and like where do you how do you draw the line on that? And there's been some pretty interesting talks with some people recently, and yeah, man, it turned into really understanding like how much you're, you know what you think that you're worth, and what your time is worth to you. And
Definitely.
yeah, man, putting that definitely putting that high ball out there and just like seeing what people will take. um yeah, that
Yeah.
there's a lot to be said there, actually.
And especially when it's like, I'm starting to get more comfortable, especially if it's like, a large company. I had an issue in the fall where like I got a good price for an event and then they canceled the week before and there was just no there it was just like it's out of my control. I'm like, but your title is senior director. Like you should
Who do
be
I
the person.
contact?
Yeah, I'm like,
Right.
you're not in control of the money for the event you are senior directing.
Where's the treasurer? Or I don't know.
Yeah, and it was so weird because I come to find out that it was just like it they could have just said like, oh, we're just not doing music anymore, and that would have been like still bad, but it's like okay, they just
At
they
least
just
clear,
yeah, more clear. But it was kind of like one person was told one thing, another person was told a different thing and was still allowed to play, but took my slot because they were told I dropped out, and I was like, that's
Mhm.
not no, like why would you
Yeah,
do that?
right.
Did you not think we were all friends because you hit us up looking for people to play your event, and so we contacted our friends.
Here we are at our first time festival energy right now.
Yeah, so like that's what always blows me away of I was talking because my one of my bands, Normal Mode, we've been doing
Hmm.
a residency at Listening Room over in Grand Rapids, and
Oh, cool, cool.
and we were talking yesterday, with the staff and the talent buyer after the show, because he also manages the venue, and um, just we were talking about like the weird that moment where it's like people who wanted live music to come to certain areas, or they felt for artists and felt for musicians and they wanted to provide opportunity. They're converting parts, like, oh, go in that corner and you can play your solo piano, or go, we made a little makeshift stage in our tap room for a band. and
Right, right.
and now they're like, those shows were few and far between, so they're not used to the regular flow of talent coming in and what expectations need to be set or what need to be met for the types of acts they want to bring in. And I feel like
Right.
so many people just they're so used to like the visual of it. They're like, we got a stage, we got lights, we may or may
Right.
not have a PA, but they could put their amps. And it's like, yeah, but if you're asking someone to bring a PA, unless they're like a high school band or like a band who's willing to eat the cost, like most bands are going to need to either rent or they source a PA, but that means they have to take an extra vehicle, and then
Right.
the cost of what they're earning on the show. And
Most times you'll see like the one Behringer tower. Yeah. Just like that most people will bring in, like not realizing that, to put on like a real show, you need, like you said, it's at that like rentable level now. Like people have no idea when it's that early in the putting things together.
And just like, and it's so confusing sometimes because it's like, especially businesses that have, they're not trying to just be a music venue a lot of the times, especially around Michigan. It's like they're already a tap room, they're already a bar. It's like, okay, did you consult about sales? Did you marketing? What type of inventory to buy? Did you do market research? Like, you have spent all this time. You didn't just go like, oh yeah, I got a few bottles of Founders beer in my fridge. That's the bar. It's like you spent time. You designed something about how you wanted to present the business. You consulted with other people, and then when it comes to music, it's just like, I don't know, just put them over there. It's like, wait, you could have just asked. Did you consult someone about acoustic treatment? Did you consult someone about electrical? Like, has your power been updated?
That's what I was going to say is when I get to the show, I want there to be more than one power outlet. And what other people have, I feel like a lot of new venues don't take into consideration is, where do I put my cases? And like, nobody's got that back room. Like, oh, just leave them to the side. I don't know. It just like looks bad, but
right.
Yeah, that between that and give your musicians like a beer, or two.
Right. Yeah. Like, I don't understand sometimes when it's, especially when it's like, oh, can you provide a meal? No, we're not providing meals for the band. Okay, but you're already selling all your food. Like, you've itemized, like, all right, if I have a chicken dish and I buy X amount of chicken, this is how much per plate this dish costs at cost. And then you know how to mark it up. So all you're doing is just giving the food at cost. So is it really losing money, or are you just not, you're trying to milk as many dollars and cents out of, like, if it's like a 2-person tiny shack of a restaurant, then sure, that would make more sense. But
small family owned, like, sure, okay, I'll support you. But like, I mean, if anything, man, like wholesale it up for give it to us at cost, and because like we're the ones bringing in that profit for you, like,
right.
But man, I've been running into a lot of places, like a lot of new venues and whatnot, that just, I mean, they'll like give you the food and the drinks and whatnot, but like what you don't realize is that their food is like Chex Mix, or like,
like, we got some Lay's chips and some Pepsi and
and like, but like in the contract it says, dinner included, couple of drinks, like, we'll take care of you, right? But man, I've been running into a few places where like they don't even have like the stage finished or anything. Like, there's no curtains, there's no like nothing. Like, it's like not even like it straight up feels like we're playing in like a Von Mar or something. Like, just like this open space with like a couple of seats that aren't even like facing towards the the stage.
Is this the shipping area of a warehouse? Like, why?
Right. But I think it's like, it's also kind of hard, like in this situation where we're just coming out of this, still in, but coming out of this hard quarantine where people are just so eager to like open up and probably eager to make money and like make a living again. But,
that's true.
There's like a lot of things that people just aren't really considering before making said money and making, that genuine money, instead of just like doing it for the money, like making sure that people are having that that environment to enjoy themselves in, versus giving us that chicken at cost. Like, I don't, there's so much that goes into it, man. This is actually fun to talk about. I didn't like think about this stuff as soon as I walk in the front door. It's just like,
right,
man.
That's that's part of why I started the podcast, is just like the things. And I've noticed it too at recent shows, because all the normal mode residencies have been free shows. So there have been those people who are like, how can the venue, like I think my brother was one of them, is just, how could a venue put on a free show? Like, what is Like, how is money being made? And it's like, well, you know, it's not explicit, you know, depending on the venue. Some people are like itemizing heads and being like, okay, there's 50 people here. They all have to spend X amount of dollars for us to make the money we need to, you know, what we normally would take out of a ticket sale. But then other places, they understand like that it's building a culture. It's sometimes less of a loss or an investment than like, you know, if you hire someone who's like, you know, on paper, like they've won a Grammy, they've toured the planet, they have all these things that should guarantee an audience, and then, you know, they end up losing $2,000 on just the artist.
Yeah.
And that's that weird moment of like, it, you know, there's such a fine, you know, fine line. I think of like the listening room has I feel like a little bit more wiggle room because it's part of a larger complex owned by Celebration Cinema. But other venues, it's like their margins are so thin that they have to kind of, you know, set certain expectations in order to like feel like they can pay their staff or like, you know, even open the doors for people.
Yeah, I'm not sure like exactly what needs to happen, but you got to have that wiggle room. You got to have that buffer, you know, because what I feel like a lot of people don't do is uh, preparing for that worst, you know, instead of just expecting for things to go really well, like opening up a venue before it's done, like, you know. It's like what they talk about in, you know, if you go to flight school, you don't actually learn how to fly a plane. You learn how to bring it back down if it breaks. Like that's like what most people, you know, I feel like a lot of people kind of look past that where, you know, you nobody's actually like, everybody's just kind of like putting all of their marbles in one jar and just expecting everything to just go the way that they predict and assume that it's going to go. And I never have assumptions because I always get screwed.
Yeah, and that, I feel like that's why I started, you know, at first it was like, okay, I'll keep cables in my piano case or I'll keep cables in my backpack. And now, you know, I think it was like 3 years ago, or yeah, 2019, Earth Radio played some of our first shows in Indiana. And while we were there, we went thrifting at a vintage store, and a bunch of us got like these vintage, you know, suitcases. And I just take mine with me, and I have like, okay, I have all the cables I need, plus, you know, some spares. I have a cable tester now. I have like, you know, extra cables in the event too, if like a bandmate forgets something or something breaks. I have like a stage clock if we want to use like a little digital clock so we don't have to keep looking at our phones. You know, I just have little things I can put in there because you know, there's sometimes the venue's well equipped, and then other times it's like, no, you're supposed to bring everything, and that's it.
Right. I'm just like thinking about the, you know, now we have all of these extra cables and extra bags in our car that we don't even bring into the gig because we know we might need them one day. But like, I'm thinking about the very first gig that I had where I had only my essentials, one cord, you know, no change of strings, like, you know, I'm even to the point where I'm trying to bring like 2 amps now because I don't know, like you just never know. There was one gig that I went on where I plugged in and we were playing I think we were playing like sound check or something. So luckily this happened during sound check, but we were playing along and I start to smell this like bad, you know, like burning plastic, like something was cooking.
Yeah.
And the more that we played, like the worse it got. And it was kind of hard to tell because there was like this fog machine that they were that the stage crew was screwing around with. So we couldn't like see where it was coming from. But then I put my nose up to my amp and it was my amp that was like starting to blow. And there was something going on with it. And luckily enough, somebody else in the band had like just this tower speaker that I just plugged right into. I have no idea what happened, but ever since then, I've been like, I kind of want to bring like 2 amps, but it doesn't make any sense to do that as a gigging musician, you know?
Right.
But Yeah, man.
Yeah, it's like I remember watching and it was just so funny because it's it's Karangbin's rig rundown video.
Hmm.
And I was like, okay, these guys like have a very like pared down sound with like some extra little colors with pedals and like how the drums are set up and
Yeah.
how their vocal style. So I'm like, what do these guys bring? And it was like the guitarist has like some Mexican Stratocaster that's like he doesn't even change the strings on. And then he's got
Right.
like 5 pedals and one, it's like, oh, I have a wah that's always on as a filter unless I need to use it as a wah. I have like 2 different kinds of reverbs, like a Strymon Flint for like some delay and washy stuff. And then he's got like 2 of the same Fender amps, like one just set up right behind it in case the first one fails. And then like that bass player had like her bass that she bought years ago, same strings, and then like I think a bass like compressor pedal or some kind of bass related pedal from like Healy Electronics, I think.
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
and then like a Fender Bassman and a backup, and it was like that's it. So
That
I'm
is
like,
that's commitment.
yeah, it was so it was like I was just like, man, like there it seems like if anything goes wrong, it's a pretty easy fix. It's not like like Eric Johnson toured some of his old classic music and he pulled out all of this old gear and old pedal boards he had rigged together to like
Hmm.
recreate a lot of the sounds from that decade. And he had to spend a ton of time like getting stuff repaired, rewired,
Hmm.
fixed, stuff that wasn't even, produced anymore. And like a clone wasn't, he could find maybe, yeah, a clone of the pedal, but it would have a different footprint and a different,
Right.
he's not used to how it's
Tubes that aren't
functioning.
even made anymore.
Yeah.
So you said he was using the guitarist was using a wah pedal as a filter, like just like leaving it on.
Yeah. He was saying he would just leave it on as like a little bit of a color and a filter. And,
Interesting.
um, and I don't know if he was just talking about like if it was always, because it might have been like just in the on position but off, and then when he can turn it on it becomes a filter until he wants it to be a wah.
Mm,
So maybe it was like
yeah,
dual purpose. But
I see. Yeah.
yeah, it was like very tiny pedal board. Very just like efficient pedal board.
Yeah, right, right, right. Yeah, I recently upgraded my pedal board to one of those it's the pedal train like nano or the metro or something. So it's like, it's only about that big.
Yeah,
Um but it's got all I need. It's got the envelope filter for the funky pow pow pow, like
right.
um octave pedal, chorus, tuner, volume, the essentials.
All the essentials.
Yeah, man. You still screw them with pedals on your Rhodes?
Yeah,
Weren't you doing that for a while?
yeah. So a lot of the times, especially because how my rig is right now, I actually am getting Jim Alfred's and repairing my keyboards.
Oh wow, okay.
Because I'm out of like I was doing a lot of the fixing myself, and also I'm taking it to a friend who could like help me out with like stuff I needed some education on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I know at some point I'll get better at servicing things, but I've been using the same keyboard, this Yamaha CP33, since like
Mm-hmm.
ninth grade.
Yeah.
and it's like the weighted action function still works. There's just a lot of like issues with the mainly like the whatever goop is used in the key underneath the keys to like keep them sliding but not sticking.
Right, right.
A lot of stuff's getting gunked up there, and some
Mm.
of the I think it's just from heat. Some of the rubber pieces that have like the little I feel like it's just a little metal tip. Whatever, like the weighted action thing hits that rubber piece, and then that makes contact with the circuit board. Uh,
Right, right.
those things are starting to get a little warped, so it's like not directly hitting that point, and it's, it makes the note not sound. So that's
Yeah.
an easier fix than replacing a circuit board. But
Right.
yeah, and there's issues with my microKORG. Has like a power issue, which I've been having. I had an original microKORG XL little power adapter thing that I got when I bought the keyboard used, and then it broke. And then actually the owner of this studio, he like soldered a new plug on it, and then it would work, and then it broke again. So I got like a wall adapter from like one of those like variable voltage ones from Guitar Center.
Yeah.
And that would work, but the it's a very short power cable, so I would have to like finagle it with like an extension cable and try not to like have it put too much strain on the where it plugs into the keyboard. So I think that just finally broke, but it can run on batteries, so I like survived
Oh, nice.
4 shows where I was just like, okay, I have rechargeable batteries. This show's only an hour and a half. It should work.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess regarding pedals, I explain all that, I guess, because instead of having like, ultimately it'd be nice to have like a Nord or a Korg workstation or something where it's like there's a bunch of instrument sounds. There's also effects. I can program and preset and do stuff. I have, the Yamaha CP33, some instruments. I don't use all of them. And then the microKORG's kind of like the synth engine. I can have more, sounds and more patches that aren't on the Yamaha. And I just MIDI chain those together. And then I take my pedal board, which has mainly, I have like that Chase Bliss Cooper Effects Generation Loss combo pedal that does like...
I don't know that one.
Cooper Effects was the original inventor of, I guess, that pedal. They recently just joined forces officially, but they had done some collaborative boutique limited run.
And what does
pedals.
it do again?
It's like it has like a tape machine vibe. So you can get like cool tapey chorus stuff. It's got a high pass and low pass filter. It's got some warble. You can simulate the tape hiss. You can, toggle it to blend or, completely remove the dry signal. And since it was a Chase Bliss collab, it's got a bunch of dip switches on the back that I have no idea what they do yet, because there's so many sound options just between the knobs and the toggle switches.
Oh man, that sounds like something that I would love to get.
Yeah. That particular pedal, they only made 1,000 of, unless they're planning on making more of that specific framework.
Yeah.
Because some people are trying to sell them for like $2,000 now. And
wow.
I'm like, I got it when it was $500. And I thought that was crazy, but
right.
Yeah, it's like it's that, and then a reverb delay, the Caverns from Keeley Electronics.
Yeah.
The Count to 5 from Montreal Assembly, this like micro looper delay that I mainly use for like one setting on the toggle switch. If you dime up all the lower 3 knobs, where like there's a blend knob at the top, and then the other 3 control different parameters, or in the one case with this setting, it controls pitch. So if you just dime them all up, you get like this kind of sparkly octave stacking trail of delay.
That's awesome.
And then I recently, actually after NAMM, like right after NAMM, part of my payment for NAMM,
yeah,
the Dream Mender from Mojo Hand Effects. It's like
I feel like I've heard of that one.
Yeah, it's like one of their newer pedals that it's a Memory Man clone. So it's just a smaller footprint, and I use it for like different delay. It has like a vibrato and a chorus button toggle, so you can get wider, delay, exaggeration, and the feedback knob can get like you could literally just crank it all the way up and it'll just ruin your speakers if you leave it. It's like
right.
it's that extreme. So I just keep it at a level where like if I want to exaggerate it, I just turn it up a little bit and then let it build before I bring it back down. And
Yeah.
so
And
all of
that's
that
like,
combined becomes the digital keyboard I don't have.
have you ever tried screwing around with like a MIDI keyboard or something? Ever playing around with that kind of stuff, or
Yeah,
you like a workstation kind of guy?
yeah, I I'm a big fan of, I pre-pandemic I bought Keyscape, and
Nice.
I think 2020 is when I bought Omnisphere. So I would like to figure out how to. I have a PC, so I'm trying to figure out the main stage equivalent for PC, so I can
Yeah.
map some stuff. It might just be like loading an instance of like Reaper or something and loading
Right.
those patches. But um, yeah, I even with these recent gigs with normal mode, listening room has a house piano. It's like a Steinway.
Mm.
And I just put a little MIDI controller on top, and then I just run Keyscape, and I use the Key Largo from Radial Engineering. It's
Oh,
like,
I've seen those before. Yeah.
yeah, so like that's been a huge upgrade to be able to like on the fly mix my effects in and out, have three analog or three just audio signals, um just regular quarter inch, and then have a two-way USB where I can either do like MIDI to USB conversion into a computer, or well, I guess because you can do it simultaneously. You can do the conversion and it can send the signal back out to the box as an output.
Right.
So that's been cool to like, in the most extreme that I've tried, mostly here in my office, like I can use like a MIDI through splitter from my Yamaha and control different synths, and then have it all routed into the Key Largo, and I have one
That's way
keyboard
above
with.
what I've ever tried to do.
Yeah, it's so like, and even like Jordan Rudess did a demo, and I was like, what? How is he controlling that one with that and getting that to react to that? Like he had so many other things chained where I'm like, okay, I guess I can use a C board to control this analog synth that's also triggering software or something.
That I love that stuff, man. Like I wish I could do that with like my pedals and stuff. Because I like having like on my pedal board, I like having those physical pedals rather than like, the multi effects processor.
Right.
Like those are cool, but like I feel like the quality of like the tones that you get, you can, I mean, obviously you can change them out to whichever ones that you like instead of just having like the Boss, GT whatever with all Boss sounds on it. um yeah, I've always been looking for like an easy way to um chain those together via MIDI so that you could just like save presets. But then again, here we are playing gigs, like not shows really, so not really trying to bring over that much stuff. But yeah, man,
Right.
I started playing keyboard in a group. It was like right before COVID,
Oh, nice.
Social Bandits.
Hmm.
And we do a lot of weddings and stuff, but we play some stuff at bars here and there as well. But I recently bought this the 61 key launch the 61 key launch key by Novation.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, I'm using it's got like faders on it and stuff, and some pads and whatnot, but like it works really well with main stage, and just using like most of the sounds from Logic and whatnot and sampling some stuff. But um I'm just like I'm like the opposite, where uh like our buddy Evan, he's like a workstation guy. He likes to have the buttons, he likes to have all the sounds like in the keyboard, while I'm like I just like hitting, next and just like going down the line of the set list that everything's already MIDI, like already set up. And the sounds aren't that bad, man, but I've definitely
Right.
been looking to get something like Keyscape. I'm obsessed with the patch that they have, the upright piano patch.
Oh yeah.
That thing sounds so good. It's got like as soon as you plug that in, I'm just like, it feels like Kiefer's in the room or something, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
It's so that was what blew me away the first time using it. It felt like, it's like how many hours were spent just like sonically recreating like the sound hitting a backboard of an upright versus the longer, presence of a grand versus, a speaker. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
I felt it in the touch, but also just the feed. Yeah. The playback, it felt like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
this is me playing as close to a real piano as I can get.
Yeah. Man, their Rhodes sounds are incredible. They really have that like rich bell tone that most, even like Logic, and like they just don't get it. You can't get that stuff. It sounds very digital.
Yeah.
But ever since starting to listen to, I love Kiefer, but like
Yep.
ever since starting to listen to Kiefer, it kind of brought me back to my roots because we always had an upright piano in our home, and I'm almost like I kind of like the sound better than a grand piano. It's
Yeah.
got that nice attack to it. There's something about the attack that just sounds. It's almost like not as clear, and I kind of like lo-fi almost.
Yeah, I also grew up with it was a big upright piano. We like found it, on the curb. Someone was about to wheel it out to be thrown away, and we're like, "Hey, we'll call our neighbor. He's got a truck. Let's go get it." And
Mm-hmm.
uh, yeah, it's definitely like I just like the like with a grand. There's like playing the Steinway every week is a treat because it's like, oh, the action's great. I like that it's, I can get a big sound out of it. It's a treat because I don't own a grand piano, but I do like times where I can, because I have a what is it, a Baldwin Acrosonic, like a spin it model at my
Oh,
house.
I had the upright non-spin it version of exactly what you're talking about.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and just having like, sessions where I'll just, or not even sessions, but I'll just like noodle or play around with ideas. Like that feels more at home than if I were like, trying to just find a grand piano all the time.
Right. I feel like I need to be like dressed up in like a suit or something. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just like a different vibe. I feel like I need to be wearing like a sweater or something and some like sweatpants when I'm playing upright.
Right. And yeah, and like that's been one thing I've with the software and the hardware. I feel like my goal is somewhere like I don't know if I'd want to be necessarily like like Anomaly, who's got like so many instances of Ableton and like this carefully mapped show, where
Right.
it's almost like a musical where like, oh, this will be changed with automation, but then I have to trigger this change. It's like everything has to be mapped out, and then the whole band is set up that way.
That's straight
um
up choreography.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
And like I don't think I'll ever get to that point. Like it'd be nice to
Yeah.
know some of those tools, but I kind of like the J3POs and the Nick Semrads, the Corey Henrys, the people who have, the knowledge of all the electric and analog gear, but also work with pedals and then can design, on the fly, like, oh, I don't have this keyboard I normally have. Let me just tweak some settings and
Right.
get the
Right.
sound I
That's
want.
what that takes me back to, my Dream Theater days when I was obsessed with John Petrucci and, his rig and everything. And he had that like that MIDI rig where,
Mhm.
all of his pedals would be in the rack, but he'd have the Rocktron, MIDI controller up front with his big shred stools.
Yep.
Um, but I liked that because he had a way to get his specific sounds, but he also had a way to completely, alter anything, turn anything on or off that he wanted. And it just seemed like the most seamless way to get like whatever sound that you need for your show and whatever you're feeling in the moment. And that's like, I think that's like why I like using MIDI so much. It's because yeah, you can adjust all that stuff, especially if you have like the right controller and it has like the right faders and enough faders. And but the problem is going in there and uh, uh, programming each one, taking like an entire day.
Yep.
It's like setting up an Apple ID or something, or like, I don't know, like it's the biggest headache until you just have it done, and then it works so well.
Yeah, it's so, like, I think of like Andy Fettig. I chatted with him last year. He plays with the Marsupials and Lipstick Jody, and
Marsupials.
Yeah. And Lipstick Jody, that band is like, like indie rock, synth pop, lots of danceable music that's this swirl of like electronic and acoustic textures. And a lot of the stuff he does, he's got one of those was it from Empress Effects, the Zoya, the pedal box that has like do you want to do sequencing? It's got a little sequencer grid. Do you want to do do you want a bunch of effects? It's got an effects library. Do you want certain instrument sounds? It has like a MIDI bank. Do you want like it's this box that just the possibilities are all over the place. And then there's like a user base community that people can make patches and post them up for downloading, and
right
and they're updating how it can function. They're just updating the pedal itself. So
that's awesome.
Like there's things that even just like that pedal by itself, or like some of the synth stuff he does, like he's really good at crafting those kinds of tones and sounds where it's like, oh, it's a pad, but it's got this like rhythmic pulse to it that's MIDI clocked to what the drummer's doing. And like, so, or like what was it? I can't remember which band they were a side project of a larger band, and I can't remember the larger band, but this group, Elephant Wrecking Ball, came through Founders one time.
I love all of these band names, man. These Marsupials, the Elephant Wrecking Ball. I'm all here for it. That's great.
They kind of blew my mind with, because the setup was, there was a trombone player. He had a bunch of pedals, and then there was a station set up with like a main MIDI, like a tiny little MIDI keyboard that was chained to like all of the like Korg, like the Volca sequencer instruments, like the drum machine, all the bass synth. I think there was a it was either the MS 101 or the Juno 106, like the module clones that Roland's putting out. And then it was bass, doing like synth bass and upright bass and bass guitar, just all the basses. And and then a drummer who had a regular kit but some pads and then MIDI triggers, and he had a click track and a station set up, so he was the master clock, and they ran MIDI to the trombone player's boomerang looper station on his pedal board, and that made all of his loops click in with what the drummer was playing. And then he took that and ran it to the MIDI station with all the sequencers. So the whole show is just like, oh, the drummer's in time, all of the loops being created are in time, and then everything that's reacting to all of the loops is also in time.
What?
I'm just like, there's 3 people doing like 6 people's jobs.
Man, all I'm picturing right now is like, you ever been to, I mean, obviously, but you ever notice when you go to like, I don't know, any kind of arena or something, and there's like you like look at the ceiling and there's like these lines of like baskets that are just full of like cords and stuff. Like
Yeah.
that's all I'm picturing. Like that stage has to be spaghetti.
Yeah. It was surprisingly the things, because we did our best to keep things clean. So like luckily the founders had enough of stage space to like, okay, we can, you know, tuck these cords here, tuck this away, because all the outputs were, you know, fairly straightforward. Since like the MIDI station I think had a little mixer, like not even
Yeah.
like a square like normal looking mixer, is one of those like tiny, like it's a box with some knobs and,
Yeah,
you know,
like a rolls or something. Like
yeah, and then like yeah, one out, like a mono or a stereo output. And
mhm.
um but yeah, they had figured it out with, you know, long enough MIDI chords to chain everything. And just
It's like making me nervous. Like it's like giving me twitches. I'm literally like I'm so basic. I am one of those guys that at like whenever I'm playing like electric or you know like a wedding or something, you know, especially if there's like a lot of people on the stage and you know a lot of channels going everywhere. I'm one of those guys that will use my wireless system even if I'm this close to my amp. Like I just like don't want to. I don't want to step on it. I don't want to like I don't know. It's just like one of my triggers. I hate chords, but like yeah, no, I don't know. That's like all I can think about.
yeah, well, and I'm curious too because I still need to get the receiver, but I bought one of those the CME Pro WIDI jacks, the like Bluetooth
Oh yeah,
MIDI units. And
and it's like actually Bluetooth.
yeah, that's where I'm like, how, like I guess that would work in terms of like pairing device to device, but I'm wondering if it's like radio frequencies where you have to like tune the blue, like it's Bluetooth 2.25 and then it won't interfere with your phone or something.
Yeah, but like I'm just thinking like most times that you well actually I don't actually know of Bluetooth that works without delay. You know.
That, yeah, that's what has me curious, because I thought I bought the unit for like the introductory price before it was launched, because I had bought like a um MIDI controller from CME like years ago, and so I was just on their newsletter, and they were like, "Hey, we're taking early, you know, early pre-orders for this new thing." And I was like, "That sounds like something that may or may not be cool."
Yeah, right. Man, I think it was like almost 6 years, maybe even more, maybe almost like 8 years ago. I gave into the line six. What is it like the Relay G35 or something like that?
Yeah, with
Um,
like the packs or whatever.
yeah, it's got the metal pack, but it's supposed to be digital and not like RF. So you don't have like any like channel that you need to set it to. I mean, it's just like 1, 2, 3, 4, you know, 1 through 10. But I've never had a single problem with like interference or you know radio signals coming through. Like
Yeah.
it's so quiet and it's like so clear that and I don't know about this. Like this is kind of like a do you believe or do you not believe kind of thing. They have a cable tone button. There's a button on there that says cable tone,
Get
and
some of
that's
that
supposed to
grit.
yeah right. I'm surprised it doesn't say like monster or mogami or like
Right.
um but it's supposed to emulate the sound of like having a cable because it's so clear of a you know a signal that you just don't even get that uh I don't know that sound of a cable in there and
Yeah.
I don't know I don't know what's the difference at all so like it's like a if you believe that kind of thing almost but I don't know I
Right.
whoever's like listening I don't know it could be a thing but I just like don't notice a difference.
Yeah, it could be one of those things where like, you know, you're in the studio where everything's so hyper focused and you can dissect a sound 8,000 ways and be like, "Oh, have you noticed there's a little bit of a change in, you know, this frequency
Right.
range or something.
You see it
And
on the screen, like what do you call the name escapes me when you're like looking at the stereogram or something. The
yeah, I know
It's got like the little green like waves going through. Oh, what is this called?
I'm thinking of the what's happening now on my iPad. I'm thinking of like these little waves popping up.
Oh, no.
But
I mean,
it's more like a
same thing.
spectrogram. I don't know.
Right. Same thing though. If you had like the uh, what's going on your iPad, and you could probably see something there, but I feel like it would only be like that much of a difference.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know.
and I feel like as a keyboard player, since I'm, until I get like a guitar or something where I'm moving around stage more, I'm used to just like making sure I have cables working. Cause I remember like when I had a church job, when I was at Western, um, it was around the same time I couldn't do a certain gig, and both of those instances just reminded me of like, like, oh yeah, this is why, it's good to have cables or have, like gigging with
Yeah,
software, like to have the hardware as a backup in case your computer fails and you're not just
right.
totally reliant on MIDI, or if you have the means, like have a backup laptop or something. And at the church, they needed to upgrade all the wireless mics and the mic packs, because there's some, I don't know, I think it's a national thing, but it's like emergency broadcasts change their frequencies at certain points. So everything has to be off that frequency. So if you're,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
on,
Because then if you go any higher, I think that's like cell phone range or
right?
something. Yeah, because then you'd be screwed. You'd be screwed.
Yeah.
I
And
remember talking about that, but I don't remember what the details, like what the specific frequencies and stuff were.
right. Well, and then the other thing was like the gig I couldn't do, the the team running this like big event in like a conference room or big like ballroom. Um, they they did the sound check and they're like, yeah, everything's working, and most of the stuff was just set up on like wireless rigs. It's just they didn't want to run all the cables, so they're like, oh, we'll just do it wirelessly. But they didn't account for like I don't know if they just didn't bring their own separate network or like what was the issue. But like as soon as you know a few hundred people with all their phones and other devices come into the room,
Oh,
there were monitors going out, there was like stuff not being sent through the house. It was just all these weird issues. They couldn't control anything. It was it was just
that
a
sounds like a
nightmare.
nightmare. That sounds like a nightmare.
So like that with you in a wireless thing, that's really easy to fix if something goes wrong. It's like, all right, I guess
Oh
I'll
yeah,
just switch to a
yeah.
cable or change the batteries. But yeah, a whole rig based on wireless, I'm like, you need like your own like ISP. Like you not
Yeah,
just your own router, you
right.
need your own company.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's funny, man. I never seen anything like that, and I can't imagine that I will for a long time because of that reason. Yeah,
Yeah.
man.
As much as tech, like, it can become adaptable, and certain things change. It's like there's nothing stronger than like plug it in there and it plugs in there and that's it. Like there's no other possible way, there's a path for it to go
It
other
ain't
than
broke, don't change it. Yeah.
that.
Right.
But yeah, you've been I mean you've been mentioning like rigs and other, seeing certain venues. Have you been like back to more of a semi-regular touring schedule now that I feel like this year, especially for me, I've booked a lot more things than I have the past couple years?
Right. So this year is going to be pretty busy for weddings for me. Because
Oh,
that's
nice.
where, that's like my work, right?
Right.
So that I can do the things that I want to do, and that's not playing weddings.
Yep.
But I don't mind doing it, and I love the job that I have. But it can get like it can feel very 9 to 5y.
Yep.
But at this point, I don't have a lot of like travel stuff. I did just get back from Dallas. I don't know, about 3 4 months ago, playing with Alex Isley,
Oh, nice.
and a few other cats from Detroit. When she came into Detroit last year, we played with her. Had this hookup. Brandon Williams, who's a drummer. Um, yeah, he's great. Grammy nominated. Detroit cat. He's got like Taylor Ikesty, Robert Glasper, like all these dudes on his albums and stuff.
Wow.
You're very thankful to call him a friend. He's such a nice dude.
Yeah.
But he had Alex Isley on one of his albums, and he knew that I knew who she was and all that stuff. So when she came into Shane Park, um, it was me and Sasha Kashperko.
Yeah, I I first heard his name when I recorded something with Evan Taylor back in 2020, trumpet player. And I know we're like social media friends, but I've yet to meet him in person.
Yeah, I love Sasha. He's a great dude and a disgusting player. He's dumb. Um, but yeah, and keyboardist named Derek Benford, and yeah, it was great, man. We got to play with her on stage, and she liked it, so she asked us back and got us out to Dallas last year. It was fun. We got to play a show with Anthony Hamilton, and yeah, it was great. A couple other cats, but hopefully more coming this year. Not no assumptions. I don't do that, but yeah, hoping more of that kind of stuff happens. The big goal for this year is I'm putting it out there now, is I'm doing my own album. So
Awesome.
yeah, starting to write stuff. I've had a couple of things that's been sitting on the shelf for like a year now that I'm just like, why am I doing this? Like, can I please put this out? So doing some more of that, going to do a couple of arrangements. And that's pretty much it, man. There's like still kind of like a big figure it out game. People are still canceling stuff, and
Yep.
so hopefully things keep going up from here. But as of right now, that's number one, is getting an album out there. And yeah, I'd like to get a bunch of different musicians on there, a bunch of my buddies, and yeah, maybe we can work something out too.
Yeah, I'm down.
Cool.
That's one of my goals this year, is to like, I've done, or in the last couple of years, especially because of having to do more remote work, I've been trying to up my what I can offer recording wise, especially like having this office here. It's like, okay, I have all this the personal stuff, my keyboards and synths and softwares, but then also in this studio right over 50 feet away, there's a like a C3, a B3, a different kind of baby grand sound, a suitcase Rhodes, a whirly, a couple farfisas, like both types of farfisas, one that has like a ton more sound options, and one that's our bass players and Earth radios that he just leaves at the studio. And there's like, yeah, there's like, and just so many, like, because the studio is owned by Bill Chrysler, who
I've heard that name before.
Yeah, he's I mean, I've only tapped just the surface of his experience, but he he spent years touring with like his, before he retired from the road, his two main working bands as a monitor engineer were with John Mayer and Maroon 5. And he's worked with like Christina Aguilera and like all these different pop artists and rock artists. And even his son is a great sound engineer. He was with Aerosmith's Vegas residency for a few years.
Okay, so he's been around.
Yeah, been around. A lot of advice. He he's one of those dudes who can just like, something needs fixing. Or if he has the contact, like there's a SSL 4000 in the main studio A, and it's like, okay, between him and the main engineer Kevin, they can fix a lot of the things or at least suss out what's wrong. But when they needed like super repair, regarding like a power supply issue, they literally had to call and fly somebody in to like help repair it. And I'm like, man, that's a weird thing to think about, like, especially nowadays where the combination of like the new gear, the plugins, the all the fancy stuff that keeps getting updated and reiterated and transformed, like working in tandem with like, like here you can listen back, like, do you want to listen back on like the tape machine, the cassette tape, the the reel tape? Do you want the the digital right from Pro Tools? Do you want to just hearing it from the board? Here's a bunch of preamps. Do you want to hear it from that? Like, there's so many routing options, but some of that gear is like, if you have to fly somebody in to fix this, it's like, how many people know how to fix some of these classic, pieces of gear before?
Right. And
yeah,
I'm sure there's a lot of people that know how to, but like also it's good to have that connection to know that they're not going to fuck it up. Right. Like they're not gonna come in and be like, oh yeah, I know how to fix this. And then, there goes your $20,000 piece of equipment. Right. I guess like,
yeah,
what's it worth to you, man? If it was me, I'd be going local, but that's, I also don't have a tour or, a manager or money for that.
Yeah. So like, and just having like this collection of all sorts of gear and microphones and things that I, as long as there's not a session going on, I have access to. And especially with, there's a Studio B that has a different board and a smaller, live room that's a taller live room. It has the same monitoring as Studio A. So, I want to find time where, and I'll just have to make it because I'm fully freelance again, but like if I can learn Studio B to a point where it's super comfortable, then now it's like you have that 2 studio setup where I think of my friends who, granted, they only did like, it was classical guitar and like flute. They do like tango music, but they would record something at the studio they went to in like New Mexico, I think. And in the main studio room, they'd track as they're going back to listen to, or like get the next song ready to record, what they just, the takes they just took. They had already made notes. Here's what we can get started on edits, sends it over to Studio B. There's an engineer there. He starts working, or she, or whoever was there. And then by the end of the session, it's like, here's your mixes and, initial mixes. Here's your, it's just like a constant flow of like everyone in the studio's doing something. It's not just like, oh yeah, he's here to help plug things in. It'd be like, no, this person can actually help edit while we're working on this next song, so that the main engineer isn't up until 2 a.m. doing edits for every song.
Right. Yeah, everybody is like a different capacitor on the microchip or something. Like they're all making it work. The assembly line.
Yeah,
that's cool, man. That's cool. I love it when it's also like I've been to studios where people are just like trying to help out, which is great, but like sometimes it feels like a distraction. They can kind of get like, I don't know what I mean by that, but like definitely I've been in that situation before where I'm just like, can you take a step back, bud? Like I don't know.
Can you just like yeah,
looking for something to do, but that's really cool, man. I was gonna say something, I can't remember now. And maybe it'll come to me. I don't know.
Right. Well, and I was gonna say regarding Alex Isley, like she I mean, she's like just put out a bunch, like whoever's helping manage all of it, like, oh, I'm gonna do a Patrice Rushen arrangement with Butcher Brown. I'm gonna be on the new Moonchild album. I'm gonna
I was
be on a
just
Glasper
gonna talk
track.
about that, man.
Like bam, 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 bam.
She's doing so much stuff, man. It's awesome. It's just like this past year and a half or so, she's really taken off. But that's remind me, man. I can't stop listening to that. I was listening to that in the car earlier today. The Patrice Rushen joint. Yeah, man.
Remind me, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I love how most of that is basically like a, it's only like one part, right? Like it's
Yep.
kind of like a loop beat kind of thing. But like the more you listen to it, the more you realize how like between the verse and the chorus, there's like tiny little details that change in like, the bass line and stuff. And I vibe with that stuff. I like the way that you can make something that is kind of like, just like a loopy beat, but like little details. It's like the small things for me when you change that. That's what keeps it so fresh. And I think they did such a good job on that. The mix sounds amazing, and I mean it's Butcher Brown, man. They're so tight.
It's so tight, so
Mm-hmm.
and just like it's almost like you're just with their albums, you're treated to like this catalog of like simultaneously like remember all those sounds from like older soul and funk music, but also are you a hip hop nerd of today, or do you like the 90s hip hop? Like they cover so much ground
Yeah.
without it's not like explicitly like this is our 90s hip hop track. It's like nope, that's just this vibe for this part of the song, and then
Yep.
they shift something, and maybe there's a solo, maybe there's a a guest artist. Like they do so
Yeah.
much.
Right. Yeah, man. I love that stuff. I've been as far as hip hop goes, I've been really digging. Oh shoot, what's the album? It's a Jay Dilla album. Um, it's like one of those albums where it's like instrumental 1 through like instrumental 38,
Oh,
and oh man, I just been listening to it's like 1 minute beats or like 2 minute beats. Um, but there's this one I think it's called instrumental 37 or something. Um, Oh man, but that stuff just, I guess it's 90s. I guess it's
yeah.
90s. Um, but well, speaking of 90s hip hop, how about that? That was actually like one of the better halftime shows I've seen.
Yeah, I don't have cable, so I was kind of sussing out like, does anyone have a Super Bowl party, or is anyone doing anything? But I made sure to at
Yeah.
least watch the halftime show because I had heard what
Mm-hmm.
the lineup was going to be, and yeah, it was very much like it was like a. I liked the way that the set was designed to be like little nostalgia cubes that would get framed for
Yeah.
television, and you'd get like,
Yep.
oh yeah, that's that music video, and like, oh yep, they're playing that classic, and
Right.
and
And then
Anderson
you just
Paak
kind of
just
like,
hanging out, and
I was just gonna do Anderson Paak just like he just like slipped right through there, man. He I don't know how he does it, but he's a slithery dude. He Yeah, dude. I when I saw that, I was like, yes. Like I don't know. That was such a cool show to me. I'm never really like a Super Bowl guy, but I do like watching the halftime show. And ever since Adam Blackstone,
Hmm.
bassist, he took over. He's like a bassist and MD for like Justin Timberlake and like
Oh right.
so many people. But he got that job, what was it, like 6 years ago or so, doing he was like um writing all the stuff, and I don't know, I don't think he has anything to do with the set, but like everything music wise, MD for like the halftime show.
Wow.
And man, ever since he came through, it's just always been fresh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's always been something that's like it feels good, and it and I feel like because I wonder like like I think of like the weekend when he did Super Bowl, um
Mm-hmm.
like there's times where like I'm wondering, like, what is it like to experience this in the crowd? Because the way that, especially when they film going inside that big building they made, and like, you know, the transitional shots of like, oh, he's coming out here, but then you zoom out and there's a bunch of people dressed like his album theme, and
Right.
like
$5,000 tickets just to see the back of it, you know?
yeah, and it's like, yeah, what are people doing live? Yeah, in the stadium, like, does it how
Getting
because
nachos.
it's like so well shot that I'm like, okay, it's almost like it should be experienced at home versus like,
Yeah, definitely.
yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, it's for the Super Bowl parties.
Right.
But yeah, man, especially like this year, it was like you can tell it's like all of the segues in between each song is like you can tell it's Adam Blackstone. It's like all like church turnarounds and stuff. Like
Yeah, you're
but
like trying to hear what they're saying, and the trans like, all right, we're gonna take it back, and then like you just hear like all these just crazy.
right.
Did they just modulate? What's happening?
Right.
Where are we going? Just like so, yeah. Always so. I'm always impressed when like there can be like somehow with church musicians they find little ways to make, you know, obviously a lot of them have chops, but like they make little arrangement cues that are like, oh, this is why they're getting hired for, you know, Bieber's band or, you know, other pop stars. I have a friend who, you know, his friend, like one of his childhood friends, had an MD job with this like Ukrainian Euro pop star, and he ended up getting to go overseas and like do some shows with her, and like just the level of like production, but also like all the transitions and the hits and like the how everything was arranged on around the songs, that like it's like it still sounds like a Euro pop band, but it's got that like that flavor
Yeah.
of all the nuances and all the of the musicianship.
It's got that thick.
Yeah.
It's got that thick.
Just the thick. Yeah.
Yep. Man, I love it. Obviously. Yeah, that's my I love playing gospel music in church. It's fun. Been doing that for almost 6 or 7 years now.
Oh, nice.
But yeah. But yeah, that was just really great. I love what Adam Blackstone does with that stuff, man. It's great. But
yeah, I would always see, thinking of gospel, you know, people playing gospel bass. I'm still on my social media break currently, but when I would just scroll through Instagram on Sundays, and it's like, oh, there's Bobby Lewis, there's, you know, Sheree Reed, like just sitting in the deepest pocket you've ever heard. And then
that
also
was probably
like, yeah.
I got the pleasure of hanging with Sheree back at it was the first Alex Isley show. We opened up for Corey Henry.
Oh,
And
nice.
yeah. So he had Justice West on guitar.
Oh, he's so
and
good.
he's dumb. He's seriously dumb. And it was the first show that he had even played with that group. Like he came out, and I remember going to check them out during their sound check, and you know, he was like still like learning like licks and stuff like from parts of the tunes, and he just absolutely killed it, man. He's crazy. But yeah, sure, just watching Sheree from the side, man, he just like sitting on his amp, just like lounging back, just like the entire night, just like, yeah, dude, he's great. I still think about that video that Sheree reading the Chicago mass choir, you know, that like viral video that came out like 8 years ago.
Yeah, he just plays that one lick. It's just that longer lick, and then everyone in the room just explodes.
Whoa!
Stop it! Just
yeah,
throwing
right.
things at him.
Just like getting up and jumping around, just leaving the shot.
just losing their minds.
Like, yeah, man.
Rightfully so. Like just such a yeah, it's crazy when like, and that's one thing I feel like I know musicians can obviously get it because we're always thinking about how we play and then hearing how other people play and just noticing, oh, that's a cool thing. I haven't tried that. And, I think of like audience members, like, I wonder, I would assume most people would get it with just from the energy, but there's that level of like, oh, everyone's excited. Like he must have played something crazy, or like, a drum solo that's very like,
Mm-hmm.
this is in your face, like, whoa, I can't even like clap that fast, and look at how fast
Yeah.
he's uh but yeah, all those little moments that are like, just like, that was insane. And like, I think of the people who are, you know I've I haven't heard it a bunch, but like, I hear it sometimes from people who are like, oh, is it ever like, like, so much about music, like you've studied music, you play a lot of music, like, can you just listen normally to music anymore? Or is it like, do you get disappointed a lot? And I'm like, well, no, if anything, it's like, I know when I really like something, I can articulate why I like it, or the feeling, or the,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
like,
yeah. You
there's
can just
more
like pick out
context.
the, yeah, yeah, yeah. Instead of like, wow, I like this versus I don't like this. Yeah. Um, in yeah, because it's usually just like a happy or sad, like, this makes me happy or this makes me sad, instead of, ooh, I
Right.
love that sharp 11 that like resolves down to the seven. I don't know,
Yeah.
like,
You
yeah,
get
I
that
mean, it's
specific.
like, yeah, right. If anything, it makes it more like, I don't want to say difficult to listen to music, because like we're sitting there with like, geometry like going on, like angles and, equations, like,
Yep.
um, uh, but that goes for anybody's style of work. If you see it anywhere else, you're going to be thinking about it completely differently, if that's like your line of work. um but I love that. I love like
Yeah.
talking to people about it, listening to the same song, and then even talking to people that are musicians, because I love
Right.
to hear like what you know like the average listener, like what terms you would put to that, because I probably wouldn't use those terms, but it could you know make me, hip to thinking about it a certain way, so that the next time I play it, I can do that for other people. Um,
Right.
yeah, yeah,
I,
yeah.
yeah. Oh, you were saying, or
Yep,
I
I'm
didn't
done
want to
now.
interrupt. I, I'm like, so where I'm facing now, that's where my computer is, just because I don't have any space on this front desk. So
Mhm.
I'm like not reading faces, because I'd have to keep doing that.
Oh, okay, I got you, got you.
um, which is just me just not making space for my laptop. But
Yeah.
the it made me think when you were saying like audiences, how, what type of language or how they would react to stuff. I've been getting recently some good feedback in general from audiences who come up after shows. And I think of, I had mentioned to you in, just shout out a text like, hey, playing these shows. And
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the one at 20 Front Street afterwards, I don't think his name's Charlie, but I think his name is Charlie. He like introduced himself and then immediately went into like, we have a song off of our second album, In Earth Radio. It's the album title, Mother's Breath.
Hmm.
And it's it's a song that our singer wrote, and it's very much like a cinematic-y, soundscapey type of piece. And she's recently been incorporating uh like a little bit of storytelling. So, we'll start making sounds, loops and pads,
Oh,
like
sweet,
mimicking nature.
sweet.
And then,
Creating an environment.
yeah, and then she'll like,
Yeah, yeah.
she'll sync the energy into like a more comfortable space, and kind of narrate almost like a meditative thing, where she's just like, like, imagine you're walking through the forest or wherever setting she wants to pick. And then,
What a great place to do that too. 20 Front Street, it's like such an intimate, like little, like a theater almost.
and then like, just being so close to the audience, there's like, yeah, there's more of that rapport than being on a stage above somebody and there's a gate if it's at like a certain festival or
Right. Oh, wait. Speaking of which, 20 Front Street, you know that when you go to the green room in the back,
right.
there's like that upright piano.
Yes, I actually used that for the show as part of
Oh,
the
okay.
setup.
So that's the exact upright piano that I used to have in my house when I was young.
Oh, nice.
The
Yeah.
Grinnell Bros.
Yep.
Yep. Same color. I'm almost I almost think that it might even be that piano.
Wow.
Like, I don't know how they got it. I don't know where they got it from, but I'm skeptical that that is actually the piano that I used to have.
Wow.
But anyway, yeah. So creating that environment for you were saying.
Oh yeah, the creating the environment and kind of easing into the song and like having this this ebb and flow of like the higher points and the more meditative points, and it ends up being like a 15-minute song if we really
Yeah, right.
it. And but setting it up that way, it feels good to be in, and I think we're finally at a point where it translates, because people have liked the song, but now there's a better way to frame it and have people engage with it. And one guy who I think his name was Charlie, I don't remember,
But Charlie, yeah,
he comes up and he's like, I just wanted to tell you that first I was what was it? First I was a roly-poly, and then I was a bat, and then I was a butterfly. And I was like, that was your journey in this song summarized. Like, I wouldn't have thought, like literally he was like, yeah, I just sat back and I was closing my eyes and I imagined being like a little roly-poly on, in the forest, and then like,
Bros going through actual metamorphosis.
Yeah, like just having this whole experience, because other people would just like, oh, you guys sounded so good, or oh, that was so much fun, and it's like those are great. And
right
and to have like such a specific like no, it wasn't just great, I was a bat. I was a butterfly for 15 minutes.
An actual trance. That's so funny.
Yeah.
But that's exactly it, man. That's why I love hearing like other people's low down in terms on what they would put to something that they hear versus, I'm just like hearing D minor 7, what, I don't know, like that's all I'm thinking about.
Yeah. And and like I've also been asked a lot recently by other musicians who, I tried, I'm trying through my Patreon and seeing if that's something people might want access to, but like the sound guy at the listening room, his name's Steve Leaf, and we did some we had him as our guest last week, because Normal Mode, the bass player and the drummer, also play in Steve's band, and I'll probably join them for certain shows this year.
Oh, cool.
But he was curious about theory, and he was kind of asking a lot of the same. Usually it starts with like, are you thinking a lot about how you're moving through, when you throw some weird chord or reharm, or a line that is out of the key, or like it's like, are you thinking about that in like a analytical sense, and it's like, how does that work?
Or are you just hearing it like?
Right. And usually it's like I can reflect on it and think analytically, like, oh, this worked because that was the sharp 5 and it created this kind of icy bright tone that I wanted from this chord. Or, I played that line, and I've been thinking a lot about one of his master classes, Jacob Collier. He demonstrated like he was just playing stuff in C, and then he threw like just straight up E major over it, and then resolved it. And it's like, oh yeah, I don't have to think, like I can think afterwards about what the extensions are. Like, oh, we got the sharp 4, or the sharp 11, the sharp 5, the flat and sharp 9 in an E
Yeah,
major
right.
related to C, but
And
it
then
just
C.
creates this weird, it's really just like, oh, you're adding this brighter tone that's also slightly outside of the key, but there's still notes, like
Right.
it's easy to
And I love
resolve
the
to the
way,
root of the 3rd or the 7th. Yeah.
right. And like, we have to think about that analytically, like, especially when we're talking about, when we're actually like focusing on theory, like, yeah, we're thinking about it,
Yep.
like we're sitting there, we're in like full write down mode. We're like, okay, so this is the sharp 5, this is the flat 2, or like whatever. I don't know. But like, I really like the way that I've been kind of taught to think about theory. And that's, you know, uh, theory is that gateway to just being able to release whatever you hear. So like, once we get to that comfortable position where we don't have to think about theory anymore, it just comes naturally, right? Where we're not, we don't have to think about it, it just flows. And we're
Yep.
not saying, okay, this is how this resolves in the end. It's just because our ears are always, a thousand years ahead of our brain, right?
Yep.
Which is why we just start playing music before we start, learning about theory at all. Like most people that become musicians, they all kind of relate to that. They don't learn theory first, right?
Yeah. And like, well, and I even think back to, because in my my head canon, I guess, the of how I remember my childhood was like, like I started official piano lessons when I was 8, and preceding that, it was like, oh, I still do this, like drumming on stuff if I'm bored, or my legs, or
Mhm.
along to music, or if I'm just thinking of a song, I just start grooving to whatever song, and then like my dad will be like, what are you listening to? And it's like, I don't know, just some funk
I
beat
don't know.
that might be cool. And but my parents have been digitizing our old like camcorder VHS tapes,
Oh,
and
nice.
I might have shared it to my Instagram last fall, but they had a clip of me, and I totally forgot about this old, this tiny little Yamaha keyboard that I had, where in the video I'm not playing like chords and notes, but I'm still like, I'm not, I'm like not even looking at the keyboard. I find the button where it's like, this changes the sound that I want, and I'm like clicking it until I hear what I want, and then I think I clicked on like a delay, and whatever the
Ooh.
default patch was like some percussion thing, and I'm just like tapping along with it in time and letting the delay
Hey.
do stuff, and I'm like, oh yeah, I totally
The
forgot about
first
that
Snedeker beat.
keyboard. Yeah, the first first Snedeker beat in the family.
Yeah. OG.
Yeah. I don't know if there's like, were you like, I assumed you started young. I mean, I met you at like Blue Lake, and that's young for a
Yeah.
lot of people, but
Jesus. I started playing when I started playing piano first. I took piano lessons when I was like, I don't know, maybe 7 years old or 6 years old or so. And then I got my first bass when I was 10. Um, and that was, yeah, that was about, wait, was I 10? Maybe like 11. But yeah, but that's when Victor Wooten time came through. That was straight Victor Wooten, straight Jocko. Like that's
yep.
all I was listening to. That's all I cared about. Like you wouldn't find me doing anything else but like trying like all the like slap stuff like that. Victor Wooten would be putting out in his master classes and stuff. But I didn't really start getting into like making like I wasn't really a beat maker until I don't know only a few years ago really. But I would always screw around on like the old keyboards that my grandma would pass down to me or something. But it was straight up just Victor Wooten for like 8 years, and then it turned into Dream Theater, and then it turned into Jay Dilla.
Yeah, it's well, and I find that it's, like Dilla still has complexities to it, but I feel like that's especially in Earth Radio, but also in some of the projects I have that I'm starting to draft. Like everything's, like there's been years where I've done like just crazy fun, more complicated music, and then I'm also in school, so I'm getting challenged that way too.
Yeah.
Now it's like, okay, I want to write music that is still satisfying for me as a performer, but also can be translatable live better and can connect with an audience rather than, just purely making esoteric, crazy music and that's all I do. And
Yeah.
it wouldn't, especially in like West Michigan, like they'd be like, I don't get it. It's like,
You're right. It's almost
here's a
like
pamphlet.
Yeah. Here's a key.
Yeah, here's the tone row this is based off of. Can you follow it?
Here's your color palette, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I've talked about I've talked to a lot of people about that kind of stuff, especially like, you know, some of the best musicians have the hardest music to listen to, like Jacob Collier, right? Like, I feel like his music is very difficult to listen to, especially for like the average listener. It's basically like a playground for people who are already musicians. Like, but yeah, man, I had a really good realization about that. Writing some beats a couple of years ago, or I felt like wow, like a lot of this stuff is kind of cool, but who wants to listen to it, right? Like nobody wants to hear all these like crazy changes, or everybody wants to hear something that they can relate to, and that's like a whole nother challenge in itself. And I love that. I love being able to write something that somebody will, I guess, benefit from in some way, however they will. That's why I always liked Robert Glasper, because he's, crazy musicians, but they know very well how to just create that environment and give it exactly what it needs to survive. So yeah, that's taught me a lot, especially with beat making and stuff. But
yeah, Glasper was like because I remember when I first started, recording and playing with Brad Fritcher when he lived in the state. He showed me Black Radio, and that was the moment where I realized all of the, because I hadn't really had formal jazz training yet. I'd just been doing like jazz band and combo, in high school, and then starting out at Grand Valley. And that was the first time where I was like, oh, first of all, having access to hip hop and neo soul and other, flavors of Black American music that I hadn't written off, but I hadn't just explored, because there was, certain presentations of hip hop. I just, it wasn't my thing. Or like, as a kid, in the Dream Theater technical metal phase is like, I want that type of sound or that, type of thing. And Black Radio was the first time being like, oh, I don't have to like jazz isn't just one. It isn't just swing. It isn't just bebop. It isn't just stuff that, is pre 1968 or whatever.
Right. It isn't just like looking at a piece of manuscript paper. Right. It isn't like looking at a piece of manuscript paper with flats and sharps all over it. Like,
yeah, it's like, oh, this can be soulful music. It can be, it's a flavor. It's an accompaniment. It's a texture. It's it's a production tool. There's so many, like, as it should be, like jazz or, Black American music as a whole, like, should be, continuing to progress as much as like jazz has this weird, there's the nostalgia factor of it for some audiences. There's the the Wynton Marcelluses of the world that are like, this is what jazz is, and this is how you do it, and this and nothing else is jazz.
What up,
And, like,
Nicholas Payton?
yeah. Then Nicholas Payton's just like,
We don't need to go into that.
yeah. Just, I remember when, because if I remember right, didn't he used to run the Jazz is the Worst Twitter page?
I think so. Yes.
And because that's where I first got exposed to him. And then unknowingly also on I can't remember if it was Numbers or Letters, the album where he, like, Butcher Brown was the backing band for a Nicholas Payton album.
I don't remember.
And whichever one it was, I happened to buy it used at, like, I don't know if it was like a WICE, thrift sale, or if it was a record store, on sale in the used thing.
Right.
But yeah, it's like, Nicholas Payton challenging the idea of jazz as even a descriptor.
Yeah.
And then also introduced me to Butcher Brown before I even knew who Butcher Brown was. And I recently, it's probably been a year and a half at this point, but the Smoogies is another band that Nicholas Payton kind of mentored in the studio. That's Vaughn Henry's band, the dude who it's like a church player, but he toured a lot with Ghost Note. He subs for Snarky Puppy.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. Yes.
Yeah. Because I love Xavier Taplin in Ghost Note. He's crazy as well. But yeah, Vaughn was the first person I saw play with that band, and I'm just like, oh, this is what, like the Smoogies kind of have that blend of different Black American music styles, and there's like a character to it and a flavor, and it's a quartet, but it's like, a trio with two drums basically. And there's a lot of like rhythmic interplay and like cool, synth sounds and all the all the grooves.
Woo.
But
it just reminds me of Fearless Flyers.
Oh yeah.
Woo. They just uploaded something yesterday with 3 basses.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, I haven't seen that. I'm thinking of the like the 2-minute clip where they have that really long, like that super long bluesy lick with all the bends.
Yeah. Right. I'm a Nate Smith fanatic. I love Nate Smith.
Yeah, I love one of the comments was just like, Nate Smith's the only one who could play a hi-hat just by looking at it.
The truest statement I could possibly imagine for him. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I'd love to see, because I loved like it surprisingly, I don't know if it made my top 10 when I submitted it to Local Spins, because it's hard to put anything in top 10. I just put whatever I kept going back to last year. But I know it made that, the list of Kinfolk 2 that made the list, and
Altitude, man.
Yeah. So many. Yeah. Such a good song, and like I'm almost done making charts for the first Kinfolk, because I started doing that at Western and with just different combos, and now
cool.
Like I wanna do that for this second album, especially like stuff that's still tricky, but like I'm trying to remember the name of the song. It's the one that's like super angry, and it's got all the like, the like didn't.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. I don't know the name. I can't remember the name of it though. Yeah.
It's like a whole song where it's like, I hope you know how to keep time, because
right.
Just
a metric modulation soup.
Yeah, even those ones that are like, conceptually it's like, oh, this crazy aggressive rhythm thing, and then there's like a phrase that goes into like free playing. Like, that's still, it's still like that album has so many colors and characters and fun moments, and Michael Mayo taking a vocal solo and
yeah, man, it's like that might be one of the most like I don't know if I've ever heard somebody scat so many money notes in my life. It's just like so colorful the whole time. I love that, man. That drum kit sounds so good too. Like the compression on that kick and that snare drum is just like it's butter.
So
it sounds so good.
So it and like one and I've loved. I think I got first exposed to Michael Mayo through that Shrek is Love side project.
Oh God, I don't even know about that.
It's like Jacob Mann and like like from Max.
Of course, it's Jacob Mann.
Yeah, it's like
of course it is.
Other, I wonder if Christian Human's in it. I can't remember who's in that band. I just know. I saw a stream where it was Jacob Mann, Christian Human, and Nick Campbell, and they did some of those songs from the album, and they might all have been on the album. But yeah, hearing someone scatting who, like, I don't know, there's something about like the pure intonation of how he sings that is just like, oh, it's not just affect and style, like you can get from other types of scatters, or even the ones that try to scat really fast. You're like, all right, was that really, like with Bobby McFerrin, you're like, that's precise. He did that, all those notes in a row,
right?
That fast.
While making noises.
Yeah, while making noises and using his hands and
yeah.
But then there's other times where it's like, it's more of an effect, like, okay, there's a starting note and an ending note, and they got there however, smearing
right
style of.
And that's what a lot of people talk about, man. Like that's really all that matters is the starting note and the ending note. Whatever you play in between, it's just a chain link fence. It's the posts that matter.
Yeah, and I follow Michael Mayo on Instagram, and it was probably, I don't know, however many, it could have been a couple years ago, it could have been 1,000, with pandemic hours and years. He put up a video where he was at Rockwood Music Hall, and he's just doing like a solo vocal piece where he's like changing the shapes of vowels and like the color of the voice, but he's doing just all these arpeggios, and it sounds super cool because it's like, oh, it's like hearing like, I don't know, like a solo horn player, or like a
right
who has that dexterity but can still have good intonation. And yeah, like,
can you give me just 1 second?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, I'll be right back. Okay,
sure.
All right. All right, there we go. Yeah, man. But yeah, dude, that album is just like absolutely, it's so killing. Yeah, I've never heard anything so colorful. Like, there was another tune on there. What is it? I think it's like the next. It might be the next tune on that album after Altitude, the one that switches between like 7 and 4.
Yeah.
It's been a second.
Oh, I was gonna say, was it the one that was that the one they put out as the first single? The
I
one.
think so. Yeah. God, what is it? What is that one called? Yeah. Yeah. That's it. That's it.
With what's his face, like, you know, rapping over odd meters.
And making it sound so fluid because he can, and he can go screw himself because it's so smooth.
And like not sticking to like, you know, like it wasn't like, oh, here's how I will divide up this thing. It's like he was just playing over bar lines. He was, you know, freestyling and landing things, dividing up sections of measures differently. Like he really like went for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. It yeah. I I cannot believe how smooth and like I feel like I've never heard that amount of space in between like each hit of the drums like in seven. I feel like his downbeat is just like it's like it almost sounds like it's late, but it's like it's so on time. It's like uh Nate Smith, man, what I don't know. He's just disgusting. I love his
So
playing.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's and well and it's nice too, like I, you know, thinking like you've played with Alex Isley, like the further you get in a music career, it's like the closer you are to those people. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, how could I meet Nate Smith? I've met Theo Katzman. That's as close as I
That's
could think.
that's dope though. That's
Yeah,
dope though. I mean, the only other way that I could think is like going to NAMM, you know.
right. Just run into him.
Yeah, right. Um, but yeah, man, it's kind of crazy. Like once you start playing those kind of gigs, and you know, just do like literally one show with like I don't know one of your favorite artists or something. Um, and it could be someone just like up and coming, upcoming artists and stuff. But like as soon as I played that one show, I was like, wow, like just playing a show with people like Sheree Reed and you know Justice West and Corey Henry, people that I've been following for such a long time, and like they're just doing the same thing. You know, they're just, at
Right.
this point, it's like you know they're not like artists at this point. I mean, they're artists, but like I see them as just like they're just like normal people hanging out, doing their
Right.
thing, just like I am. You know. Which is like really humbling too, like because they're all just doing the same thing that we are, sitting in our room, sitting in our studio, doing the same thing, just more busy traveling because they've been doing it for such a long time. But
Yeah, they have
um,
the
it's a
PR
big eye
team.
opener. What's that?
And they have like, you know, they have teams now that can like help, you know, like take away all the focus from like, oh, I have to promote myself, you know, like
Yeah,
all these different means of communicating and trying to get, you know, like, hey, we put out an album. All right, we need to do radio distribution, streaming, physical media, newsletter notice. Do we have a
right,
Patreon, social media, like
right.
all separate campaigns that, you know, you might need to pay for if you know, want certain results. Like, yeah, to
It's
have,
so much shit, man.
yeah,
So much. And you know, that's what keeps us in our studios, you know, doing this kind of stuff for so long is you know, making that name for ourselves so that we don't have to do that anymore. And
right,
that's high on my list of things to, you know, improve for this year for myself is you know, putting out flyers and making, you know, upcoming gig stuff and making posts for what I'm working on. And, you know, in the past, I didn't really realize the importance of doing that kind of stuff, but it's really like that's what keeps eyes and ears open. Um, I think that's really important. I have a lot of friends that do the same thing, and it's amazing how much of a following that you gather just just doing things like that. You know, just staying present.
right.
Um, it doesn't even have to be something like a video, like just a post of you know, this is what I'm doing, right?
Yep. And like, especially this year, you know, last year was so wedding heavy for me that with this year, it's like Earth Radio is going to be playing a few different festivals, and then Normal Mode will have some gigs here and there. But we started the year off with a planetarium show where a visual designer like designed a whole show around a couple sets of music, and we're like, we didn't know. I mean, we knew that series took place, but we didn't know like especially since Normal Mode's album that came out in December, Downlink, is very much like, we have tracks named after the moons around Mars, and we have like other space related things, and the sound of it's kind of lo-fi space beats, and
man,
like seeing that, we're like, oh, now we have, especially now that we know that the visual designer is willing to work with us on other shows. Like he'll be joining us for our last Tuesday at the residency gig and projecting all of the stuff on the stage, and we're gonna workshop that probably on Monday. But now that we know he's down to do other shows, and he's also down to like add more material so that we can have 2 longer sets, it's like, oh, now we can just start, let's go to Muskegon Community College and go to their planetarium. Let's go to, does MSU have a planetarium? I don't know. Let's see.
That is one of the coolest things I've ever heard. I want to play a show in a planetarium.
It was such a cool experience, because like, it was funny because like there's almost like 3 tiers of people. It was like people who already like planetarium shows, so they're gonna come because it's at the planetarium and they're like fans of that medium. And then there are people who are fans of the music, and then there are people who are who really wanted to see the combination, and a lot of people on it's like edibles, whatever thing they took before going into the room,
right.
just being like, oh my God,
whoa,
so me. And then like for me as a performer, it was like, because some of the songs we included that fit kind of the vibe. We've been playing Dream Voyager, the Tigran song.
Cool. Yeah.
And so there's times where like, okay, I have to focus on that because it's more involved,
really hard. Yeah.
and then I look up, on the song, a lot of Normal Mode songs are like certain grooves and just kind of ambient environments, but like still a pocket, still some structure, but usually pretty open-ended. And so there were times where I could just look up at the dome and be like, I did not see this at rehearsal. This is sweet.
I would lose where I was in the song. I'm a space nerd. I love space. I keep on top of that stuff. So that might actually be too much of a distraction for me.
Just like, what?
I mean, that's even without the edibles.
Right. And so it's like Earth Radio's, we've got some new tunes brewing. Normal Mode's probably going to work on new music, and we have, kind of our first year officially as a band since the album release. And then, I'm workshopping like Blushing Monk by Jazz Group, just to see like if, even just to get in and record like an EP or something. And then, Mark Lavengood's doing some stuff. He also, part of his quarantine, aside from taking care of his family, was he converted his shed into like a very homey studio vibe. Like just put in like a nice Kawai upright with one of those like what was it? I don't even know what it's called, if it's just like a practice mode on the
demo mode.
Yeah, like where you can like push down the una corda, and then there's like an extra level of una corda where it's like it moves this like felt thing closer to the strings, so you have even more muted sound.
Yes.
And it's like that perfect, it almost sounds like you're putting a filter on the piano before you've even like recorded it.
I love that stuff, man. Going back to Kiefer, man, he does that all the time.
Yep.
I love that. Yeah, I used to do that all the time, just because I never liked how pingy my upright piano was, and I would just hold that left pedal down. Um, yeah, man, that's a vibe. I love that.
So there's just like, yeah, there's so many creative projects that'll be gigging out and doing things this year that I'm like, I'm already having to sub out certain weddings, but I'm I almost want to like challenge myself and really like make this a year, like even if 2020 and 2021 there was still growth, there was still stuff
Sure.
learned, there was still, I made a compilation video at least the end of 2020 of like,
Hmm.
oh yeah, I did like 30 album reviews for all these different artists. I did this many recordings. I've got to do these types of events that were allowable under the conditions,
Right.
and like got better at streaming setups, and just all these. I was part of like a uh the Michigan Music Alliance's fundraiser efforts. They did a couple virtual festivals, and Normal Mode played one last year, and I played some solo stuff the year before, and it was just like, for like a week or a week and a half or how many days it was, every day, all day, you could tune in and just see like, oh, there's this guy in his living room playing guitar. He's a singer songwriter, and then cut to
Hmm.
a band that pre-recorded this set at like we pre-recorded our set at Black Swamp Percussion, where our drummer works.
Cool.
And
Yeah, I've played there once before. Yeah.
oh, nice. Um,
Yeah.
uh, so you probably met him. Nathan Coles, like probably the younger dude that there.
Yeah. 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 Definitely met him. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. That was probably 6 years ago that I did that. But yeah, man, that was fun. Where they just like set you up right in front of um the well, what do you call
Little
them?
set or whatever. The
Yeah. Yeah.
wall.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, that was fun. A little tour around there. But yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. So it's like, it feels like it's close to, because 2019 was such a busy year and a ton of growth, like across the board, and it's starting to feel like that type of energy again, and it makes me want to like, like, all right, we gotta like, Earth Radio's got the LLC, we got the trademark, let's go for getting all the things explicitly copywritten. Let's get things set up for sync licensing. Let's get the stems and start doing what Wolfpack does, like putting certain songs up for purchase as stems, and letting
Yeah.
I've been kicking around like especially since we spend so much time in the studio with layers and like different tones and different like, what if we put the drums in the basement? What if we put the drums in this part of the building?
Yeah.
um like taking those stems and having electronic artists in the state that are cool, that would fit the vibe of what we're trying to do, kind of doing what I saw the Grand Valley's new music ensemble do, where I wasn't in the ensemble at the time, but they had recorded in C, the Terry Riley tune.
Yeah.
Um, and they recorded it at some nice studio in New York, and it, was well produced and well received. And then the follow up was taking that material that was recorded and giving it to like, like Mason Bates and Jad Abumrad and, all these random people in the contemporary music space, and just like, hey, make a remix out of it, add
Oh, that's
beats,
cool.
change how it flows, make it shorter, make it long, whatever you want to do with it. And so I was thinking of that for Earth Radio. Like, if we can, take the stems, that's a thing that people could buy standalone, but then also allow that to be used by creators to make an Earth Radio like remix EP, and then that
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
becomes this other, kind of like the Black Radio remix EP, where some of
Right.
those
Right. Right.
tunes are
Right.
like so cool just from simple, like, what if the beat was placed this way, and
all the
we harmed this
K-Tronado
part.
remixes and stuff. Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm definitely feeling the like, I might not earn as much subbing out certain weddings, but I feel like I need to like,
Yeah, you got to follow your heart.
Gotta follow what's been what's been just kind of slowly boiling the last couple years.
Right. Yeah, I'm in the same boat, man. Yeah, I'm in the same boat. Yeah, I'd love to be doing that kind of stuff, but first things first is the album for sure.
Yep.
Got a lot on my plate. Been doing a lot of leather work too, but like
nice.
That's very, very, very specifically. I need to get that album done. It's just what's been on my mind for such a long time. But yeah, like I just don't want to think about it anymore. Like I just want that. I want it to be out. I don't want any of these songs on my computer anymore. I just want to put them out there. But also, yeah, I mean, what else can it do besides get us closer to where we want to be?
Right. And I'm such a fan of people who they figure out like, I think of like the Jack Contes of the world, the people who like everything they touch just turns into like just a whole engine. It's like, I've been, I think you probably know her, Madeline Grant, like how she like moved to LA and got involved with that crew, and seeing like her post about whatever, I forget what cover it was, but it was with Stories, I think it's just called. It's like the acoustic Scary Pockets brand.
Oh yeah. I remember hearing about that.
And I was like, oh, they're literally like it's like the power of like, okay, they have a studio, they have the means to just dress up, a corner, or like have a wall, or frame a shot a certain way, and then they, at least from a couple of videos I watched on the process, they just hire up whatever musicians for these sets. They come in, a couple times a month, and then there's just a bunch of stuff tracked in those days that they're there. And then the rest of the time is just like piecing it together, editing,
right,
and putting things out. And it's always like, even if an arrangement's like, oh, that was fine, or like that was, that one part was cool, it's still like professionally done, and it adds to their catalog. And then, now there's the touring group, and the, everything just builds out in this cool way where it's not just like, oh, I'm in a band. It's like, no, I have like a whole industry.
Yeah, honestly,
options.
Yeah. Right. So, well, yeah, man.
Yeah, this was a great catching up.
Absolutely, man. I had no idea it was about to be, just honestly, these 2 hours just like flew by. I didn't even realize it was 2 hours.
Yeah, I was checking, with my iPad doing audio stuff. I was just looking at certain things. I thought I heard something weird, and then I'm like, oh, it's already been like 2 hours.
Yeah. Well, bro, yeah, man, it's been absolutely great to catch up and talk with some, fellow musician about things that I've been just straight up thinking about recently, and it's good to like get it off my chest. Yeah, man. But definitely, I'll keep you in mind about maybe a couple of tunes or something on my album, man. I'd love to play with you again, man. It's been so long.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess we mentioned Alex Isley. Where should people find you? Do you want them to find you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you can find me on Instagram, matt.b.ryan. You can also find me on Facebook. I'm posting a lot of stuff on Instagram, and keeping up on, letting people know where I'm going to be, so you can check that out. And I'll put some more updates on, where the album sits, and that's pretty much all I got for right now. Just trying to get through the rest of winter as a musician, But
I feel that.
Yeah, man. I appreciate this, and I look forward to doing this again at some point.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll let you know when I think the next time I'm back on the east side, I'll be there. Like, it won't be for a show. I don't know if you know Haruki.
I know that name, but I don't think I've ever seen or heard him.
Yeah, we're getting together with a singer friend of ours. She'll be in town, and we're all just gonna like hang out and help flesh out some of her songs and record some music. So
sweet.
That'll be a fun time.
Nice. Yeah, man. Let me know when you're around, and I'll come chill.
Sounds good.
Cool, man. Great to catch up with you, Dutcher.
Yeah, same.
All right, man. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, talk to you soon.
Cool, brother. Take care, all right? See ya.
Thanks so much for joining us today. Wasn't that great? Matt Ryan, great dude, great bass player, hard worker. You know, we had caught up at NAMM back in 2020, right before everything shut down. And it's great to hear that he's, you know, been out and doing stuff and playing with, you know, great musicians, and just, you know, it's nice to hear friends doing things and being able to do things again. That's always a fun part of this podcast, to be like, oh, you're here, you're still doing stuff, or, you know, you made adjustments, but you're still able to play, you know, certain gigs, or like you have a day job, but now you're able to play more frequently with this band. Like, all those things are so cool. So again, go check out Matt and what he does. Great bass player, and apparently a keyboard player. Didn't know that fact about him too. So catch him with his different groups. And if you dug any of the podcast, you can support patreon.com/DutcherSnedeker, DutcherSnedeker.com for everything else. But until then, we will see you in the next episode of Mitten Backstage. Take care.